Now, the world of Hyrule is usually depicted as some sort of medieval landscape filled with knights, horses, and swords. But in the last game, we all of a sudden came across a lot of advanced technology from some sort of lost civilization. And so the world was all of a sudden filled with gigantic walking tanks that can shoot lasers, as well as advanced weapons that look like something out of Star Wars. So all of this was quite unexpected, right? Well, yes, but also no. Because robots and stuff similar to that have been seen in the games for a very long time actually. One great example of this is the Armos. However, where did these robots come from and why were they made? Well, let's find out. But first, our sponsor of today, Keeps. They specialize in one thing, hair. You know, that fuzzy mountain on top of your head that everyone holds dear? However, there could be something wrong with it. Because 2 out of 3 guys will actually experience some form of baldness by the time they're 35. So clearly, prevention is key if you want to keep your beautiful hair right on top of your head where it belongs. And this is where Keeps comes in. They help you with keeping your hair and it can all be done from home. Just visit the doctor online and get hair loss medication delivered right to your home. They make it easy and deliver your medication every 3 months. So you can say goodbye to the pharmacy checkout lines and awkward doctor visits. So if you're noticing that you're losing hair, do something about it before it's too late. So go check out Keeps. And for a limited time only, go to keeps.com/Dr.Wily or click the link in the description to receive 50% off your first order. Now, let's get back into the video. Now let's start at the very beginning. The Armos, also known as soldier statues, are seen in a lot of Zelda games like Ocarina of Time, A Link to the Past, and even Link's Awakening as enemies. They are stone or mechanical statues that come to life and will go after you, and their weakness, attack methods, and habits vary a lot game to game. But in almost all the titles, they are initially inactive and will activate and charge at you once you disturb them. There are quite a lot of different types of them as well. For example, some normal ones will self-destruct after being attacked. And then there are even more variations like the Armos Knights, Death Armos, the Armos Warrior, and Totem Armos. All being seen in the Zelda games instead of dungeons, in front of ancient ruins you explore, and even in temples made by the gods of good. But where did these machines even come from? Someone must have made them, and it could even be connected to the ancient technology seen in Breath of the Wild. The Armos do function in a similar manner to the Guardians after all. For example, activating as soon as you get close. So, are there any clues in the games that hint towards their creator? Well, surprisingly enough, yes. The very first game mentions in the manual that they used to be human soldiers but were turned into stone at some point. Now it's not mentioned who did it or even why, but if this is really the case, then they are more like some sort of magical being instead of an actual machine. A living cursed statue or something. That must have been created by powerful magic. Probably dark magic. But like I said, all we got from the first Zelda game is that one quote. That's it. No clues on how or why. Now the next game that mentioned something was the Minish Cap. Here they say that they were built by the Minish for the Wind Tribe long ago as a security mechanism. That's also why you can still find them in the Wind Ruins. So here we once again got a completely different story. This time they're some sort of mechanical beast. They can even be manually turned on and off when Link climbs inside of one while being Minish sized. He can just flip a switch on the inside that will ignite a flame and activate the Armos sensitivity. So is this their true origin then, and not the whole soldiers turn to stone guard statues thing? Well, we don't know. And it doesn't even end here. Because in Ocarina of Time we see these enemies as well, but for some unknown reason, some bear the Goron emblem on them. So now all of a sudden a completely different group has their mark on them, like they were made by them instead of the Minish. And while the small Minish people are great craftsmen, the Gorons can also create wonders with stone and powerful gems and ores. So now we have another group that could have created them. And the crazy thing is, we have one more option left, because in Skyward Sword they appear in the Lanayru mining facility and the pirate stronghold, and they only come to life when an active time shift stone is nearby. Now this mining facility was once the main industrial complex of an unnamed civilization or corporation that had died out. So we don't even know who they are. And we have yet another group. We have so many now that it's going to be hard to figure out who even made them. A lot of people tend to say that the Minish created them, but as you can see, we already encountered them earlier in the series timeline right here, at the start, which is Skyward Sword. So they weren't the first to make them, and in that game we come across a whole lot of other robots as well. But there is one way we could explain all of this, and why they are seen in such a wide range of places in the game. And it all started in The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, the very first game of the franchise's timeline. And what happened at the end of this game actually explains how all the other groups in the later games got their hands on the technology. Because back in the day, a lot of the races of Hyrule lived in the sky, away from monsters and other potential dangers below. So they couldn't have made the mining facility. But in the end, a lot of the races in the sky went on to live on the surface of the world again. And in the end, almost everybody lived there, and the world started to change. And what this probably means is that the Hylians and other races eventually came across the mining facility too, and obviously looked around there. This way they could have learned how all these devices work and even how to build them. And so they were seen in later games. The Gorons and Minish learned how to build them by looking at examples there and used them for their own defenses. For example, by putting them in the wind ruins. And so the world was eventually filled with them after multiple different factions built them for a bunch of different reasons. For example, the ones seen in the Tower of Gods. These were most likely made by the Minish to make the challenge of the gods a tough one. That group is closely related to the Triforce and other relics as well. They literally are some sort of godly creatures. And when we see the statues in some of the dungeons or even fortresses in the game, it could have been the handiwork of the Gorons. If you really think about it, this does make a lot of sense. And that's mostly because of one reason actually. We've seen something like this before, in the most recent game even, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Here we first lost to Ganondorf, but in the end, Link managed to beat him. And 100 years prior to the events of this game, a prophecy warned of the return of Ganon. And so, hoping to prepare in the same fashion as their ancestors, the people of Hyrule began working to locate and excavate the divine beasts and guardians, which are gigantic robots that were created for one purpose: destroying the evil Ganon. Eventually they found them, and 4 champions from each of Hyrule's races were chosen to pilot the divine beast of their people. And in the end, the restoration of the mechanical army that they found seemed to be a phenomenal success. Everything worked again, and they were able to control and use them. But regardless of that, it ended badly. But that wasn't because of a lack of engineering skills. So if the people of Hyrule were able to learn from this incredibly advanced technology and reverse engineer it, then why not do the exact same with the stuff found inside of the mining facility like the Armos? That robot is a lot more simplistic than a guardian or divine beast. So it's only natural that they would eventually understand how it worked and was made. So all of this at least explains who made them. Well, some sort of, since we don't know the original makers. We just know how the copycats got the idea. But sadly enough, we will never really know who created the old technology seen in Skyward Sword. It could have been the Sheikah just like in Breath of the Wild, but we can't say this with a lot of certainty. But regardless of that, there are still some other questions unanswered. With the biggest one being, why are they enemies of Link in almost every game? Almost always they just attack you out of nowhere, and some only wake up when you walk past them. Well, it could always be that these Armos are extremely sensitive, and almost anyone would be able to trigger them. However, it could also be that Ganondorf had a hand in all of this, which is also a thing we have seen in Breath of the Wild. In the game they were waiting for him and prepared with all their technology, and eventually he came, breaking the seal that was placed on him, rising up around the castle. But then it all went wrong. He surprised everyone, because he managed to corrupt the entire Guardian army with his Malice and turn them against Hyrule, which resulted in the end of the kingdom. The whole place was destroyed, and the world experienced an era of darkness and uncertainty. And all the mighty machines that the people of Hyrule had mastered became the servants of Ganon, even when he was sealed away again by Zelda. But the most surprising thing is that even 100 years after he took them over, they are still under his influence. Which is incredibly impressive, as you can imagine. And it also gives us an answer to why the Armos are evil. A lot of the places we go to that have Armos are also under the control of Ganondorf. So maybe he took control of those devices as well, just like he did in Breath of the Wild. It's clearly a trick he can pull off at almost any time. And it's also not his only trick. In Ocarina of Time, he could even infect a deity with a parasite that he most likely created. That's exactly what we saw at the start of the game with the Great Deku Tree. So something like that would explain why Armos can be hostile and so aggressive towards you, even though they were most likely made by either the Minish or Gorons. But at the end of the day, who knows? This is just my take on it. A little theory, you know? But I don't know everything, obviously. So if you have anything to add to the theory, or if you think that I missed something, then be sure to mention it. Because while I could find a lot of answers, I clearly didn't find them all. We still don't know the real original creators of the Armos, but maybe we will get more clarity on that one day. But for now, I'm quite convinced that the Minish and Gorons made all of them together with any alternate versions. But all the robots and Armos seen in Skyward Sword are still, to an extent, a mystery to me.